Okay, everyone, we are back again to explore the UEF units this time. I don't believe I've forgotten anything. Um, we'll start off with the ACUs. This is the ACU you start off the game with. It is completely unupgraded right now. And then this is the support command unit, which, fun fact, it's coming from Forged Alliance, the previous game, before Supreme Commander 2. Which was a nice touch by the modders. This overview, by the way, is for the RVE, or the ReVamped Expansion mod for Supreme Commander 2, which adds in a lot of units, as well as a lot of experimental units into the game, and takes kind of some elements of the older game, like Supreme Commander and Forged Alliance, and mixes it into the Supreme Commander 2 style of gameplay. Games in Supreme Commander 2 RVE are very long compared to the regular Supreme Commander. But the ACU, while unupgraded, can add lots of things to it, like a tactical missile launcher. I believe there is artillery somewhere in here. There's the artillery. And this adds actual models to it, so I assume that right there is the TAC, and that is the artillery piece on it. So the support armored command unit, I believe, comes completely upgraded. They come out of these SCU capsules right here, and I don't know if you can make more than one. I can check real quick. You can indeed make more than one. I don't need to. You don't need to do that. Thank you. Anyway, moving on to the regular buildings. This is the land factory and the air factory next to it. And if you haven't played Supreme Commander 2, there's a neat feature where you can add tactical missile launchers, anti-air turrets, intel installations, which are its radar, as well as increased vision radius, and shield generators to your factories for a cost and a little bit of time. And that helps you build some defenses around your base because you have a little bit of anti-air, you have a little bit of point defense with the tactical missile launcher, you have the shield, and you can do that to all of them. You have to be under the Tech 1 tab in this expansion mod in order to be able to do it. And then down here we have the Sea Factory, which of course can do the same thing, but the Sea Factories also get a torpedo launcher add-on, because obviously the tactical missile launcher can't protect it from subs. Alright, so if we go up here, this is the research station that you build with the UEF. The research stations, the more you have, the faster this little bar will move to get you research in order to be able to research higher tier units, as well as perks for your units and buildings and such. Over here, these are the T1 power generators, as well as T1 mass converters. And starting with the mass converters, they work a little bit differently than in Forged Alliance. You either have the same as how they worked in Forged Alliance, where they just constantly convert energy into mass, or if you turn that off, they also have a feature where you can do it in a you can basically buy an instant amount of mass. So in this case, for 2,000 energy per mass converter, you can get 100 mass. So if I were to click this, I would pay 8,000 energy and get 400 mass. It's not very much, but when you have a lot, you can actually convert quite a bit at one time. Over here is the T2 power generator with a T2 mass converter. These ones don't actually have much of an animation. It's just a little, those little 4 squares go in and out. The Aeon units, the Aeon mass converters actually have quite a bit more animation to them. And then over here, the T3 power generator and the T3 mass converter, they all work the exact same. They all have a continuous mode, or I guess you could call it a burst by mode or something, however you want to look at it. But an interesting building that looks like I built one anyway. Okay, an interesting building that you get with the UEF is the research conversion station, which acts much like a mass converter, except these you can convert mass into research points, and I believe, I don't quite remember exactly how much you got. I think you needed 3 to get 1 point of research. Or nope, it looks like it's one point of research per building. So in this case, it would be 26 points of research every time I ask that to cycle. But you do not get the option to have it continuously generate more research. You would just want to build these for that, which after you have a lot of stuff researched, these become less useful. Alright, so moving on to the Tech 1 land units and buildings. Right here you have the point defense system, which sort of unfolds to attack. Typical UEF shells. You also have a shield generator, which these are very small and can be kind of easy to overlook if you're scanning through someone's base, because they're just these little points on the ground with a little glowy ball above them, but that's the area of effect for the shield. It's not very big, but they're not very expensive either. And then I cannot get the anti-air turrets to ground fire, but I imagine that that would unfold and begin shooting much in the same way that the heavy point defense turret does. And you have the Sliver tank, or the Silver Tide, sorry, the Silver Tide T1 tank, which after you hit a certain point in I believe it's the Tech 2 research tree, you have something called Afterburner that applies to pretty much all of your units, whether they're Tech 2 or all the way up to Tech 3. You have this Afterburner, which, to demonstrate, does exactly what it sounds like. It just makes them move quite a bit faster. It does not change their rotation speed, but you'll see them slow down as soon as it wears off. The UEF units are rather slow, so having the Afterburner ability is actually quite nice. Looks like it didn't tell him to go far enough. I can just do it with this. And Afterburner on. It picks up a little bit of speed. So, these obviously, as tanks, have rotating turrets. They will not rotate to face their target like some of the Tech 1 Aeon hover tanks did, which is pretty good for moving while firing. This is a mobile light anti-air gun called the PAC, and I cannot get them to ground fire, but it's basically just a ground-based anti-air unit. And then over here, these are the Mech Marine Mark IIs. They cannot rotate their torso like the Aeon T1 bot can, but these guys have cooler looking guns, let's be honest. And then moving over to the Tech 2 side, I noted in the Aeon video, I don't think any of the races or factions get a Tech 2 anti-air turret. The Cybran might, I don't really remember. Regardless, the UEF don't. But they do get, unlike the Aeons, they have a landmine system, which is exactly what it sounds like. If your enemy senses units too close to this, it's going to blow up and do a lot of damage to his units. But here we have the point defense system. At the Tech 2 level, it should unfold and begin attacking. And I believe those are actually anti-air turrets on top, which you can unlock through the research tree, like this right here, Tier 3 anti-air upgrade. I believe it would be this one, the Tier 2 anti-air upgrade. That's why you don't get a specific anti-air turret. And then this is the UEF artillery, for Tech 2. Has decent range. And actually moves very quickly, and I can demonstrate that if I switch it to harden mode. So yeah, I will have it attack this point, tell it to harden. It will move very quickly, unlike the other factions' T2 artillery systems, which have very slow rotation speed. So this actually makes a much better emergency point defense than theirs do. Because see, that one got about 3 or 4 shots off, whereas the other ones, you usually only get about 1, maybe 2 off if you're lucky, because that's how long it takes them to just to aim down, let alone change what direction they're firing in. Here, this is the scatter field stealth field generator for the UEF. The Aeon do not have a stealth field generator, if I remember right, but you have a stealth field, which will make your units, I believe, invisible to radar, but it will not make them invisible to vision. So if they fly a spy plane over where one of these is, they would still be able to see it, because the pings will stick through losing vision. So if it's a building, something that you can't move, it will just be revealed basically the whole time. And there's also, if you turn that off, you have the option to enable a cloak field, which I believe will make units just invisible to vision. And those you can operate at energy cost. And then of course this is the T2 shield generator. It just gets that little blue light above it, and it has a much larger radius for protection than this does. Something of note is that the Tech 2 shield generator can't upgrade to the Tech 3 shield generator. So while building Tech 1 shield generators isn't necessarily the best idea, unless you really need them, building Tech 2s can still be pretty beneficial, because you can always upgrade them later to Tier 3s when you need to. And as for the units, you have the Titan, which is a Tier 3 unit from Forged Alliance, but it is a Tier 2 unit, much in the same way that the Loyalist for the Cybrans has been turned into T2, although they called that the Loyalist Reborn, because there's actually a vanilla unit called the Loyalist. It just has some sort of cannon. I don't really know what the UEF weapons are called. This is a mobile artillery piece for the UEF. It is pretty basic. It does exactly what you'd expect. It just shoots. Pretty decent range on it. I told it to fire right over there. Is it gonna fire? Did I miss it fire? Or did I not tell it to fire far enough? Let's try a little bit farther. My bad. I should have clicked that. There we go. Now he's moving. That did not happen to me earlier. He was firing earlier, so I'm not sure why he decided not to fire right now. Anyway, it's an artillery piece. You already know what it does. That's mobile, and this one is fixed. And this one's a little bit more powerful, obviously. So here you have your mobile missile launcher, which I believe they are technically tactical missiles that it shoots, so a tactical missile defense system should shoot these down. And what's nice about the UEF tactical missile launcher is it's basically a never-ending stream of missiles. So you don't really... You have high DPS, low burst damage, but high rate of fire is really good to prevent overkill, especially against lower tech units. And then this is the Tech 2 shield generator. It's mobile, so mixing some of these into your military can really help protect them. It doesn't have an offensive weapon, so I can't really get it to do anything except have a shield. The Mongoose Mark II is kind of like a little siege bot. It has a pretty cool Gatling gun on it. It has a long wind-up, but does pretty good damage. Has to cool off, wind up again, fire. I think they actually look pretty cool. Over here is the Riptide X hover tank, which I assume is supposed to be a direct upgrade from the Forged Alliance Riptide. Now this has a very rapid-fire machine gun on top, as well as its main cannon, so it's actually remains a pretty good unit for taking out lower tech units, as well as coming with a shield once you get the proper research upgrade, which it might actually require the shield upgrade in order to unlock it. Yeah, it requires the shield. And then over here you have a Tech 2 mobile anti-air gun, which is just a basic flak unit, although I can't get it to fire. So moving over to Tech 3 for the land-based units and point defenses. You have the Tech 3 shield generator, which has the biggest radius of all, of course. You can compare it to its lesser versions here. Might be about 33% larger area than the T2 shield generator, but don't take me at my word for that. I'm just guessing. So you have a T3 point defense system, which if I remember is supposed to be just a bigger version of the one that was in Forged Alliance, as the UEF were the only ones who had a T3 point defense system in Forged Alliance. And it was a giant Gatling gun. And lo and behold, we have a giant Gatling gun. A long wind-up time after it's fired its first volley. But pretty cool. And this is an anti-air SAM launcher. Of course, I cannot get it to fire, but I assume it's going to unfold and then start shooting missiles at people. This is what they call the block. It's the basic T3 assault bot. It's a quadruped. It does not have a rotating turret. Or, I didn't think it did. It probably does. I hit the wrong button. Yes, it does have a rotating turret, but it will automatically change the direction it's facing towards its target, which is not ideal if you need to recall it, because it's then going to have to turn around, as you can see here. Yeah. So this is the mobile anti-air gun. It's just, they basically just keep adding anti-air turrets onto the other. Like, it's just the same thing, it just gets bigger and bigger. This is the Supreme Titan, which is supposed to be, as you guessed, a better version of the Titan assault bot. This guy comes with some... I'm not sure if these technically are tactical missile launchers, because they look very direct fire, so I don't think tactical missile defense can protect against them. Looks like they have some kind of Gauss rifle, as well as those rockets. Over here you have your tank. This is the Rockhead, which was in the vanilla SupCom2 game. They've decided to put it as a Tech 3 unit instead of, well, it was basically a Tech 1 unit in the vanilla game, because there wasn't really tech levels. But you could upgrade the heck out of it. It has a very slow firing weapon, so it's not great against lower tech, but it will perform just fine against other T3 units. This is the Percival Mark II, a supposed upgrade over the Percival from Forged Alliance, which most people would consider to be better than the Titan most of the time. And this has a very long wind-up for its main weapon. There you go. So a Gatling gun and a very slow-firing rifle. So this unit will perform... I mean, tank-wise, it's great. It's great compared to the lower tech units, but it's going to need some support from something like this guy to take down lower tech units, or mixing T2 units into your military, or just having an absolute, like, massive number of them compared to your opponent. And so this little guy right here is a mobile missile launcher. I do believe his attack counts as a tactical missile. These, I believe, are tactical missiles, but I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to test it out in a match. But it does have some point defenses for itself in order to protect itself and be useful even when it's not firing its attacks at your targets. And then here, we have a mobile anti-missile defense, so this should shoot down any tactical missiles that are headed your way. And then lastly, I've moved the engineer in particular, but you get access in all factories to the field engineer for Tech 3. And the field engineer is a tankier engineer that can build these deflector walls right here. So while these are your basic walls while you're playing as the UEF, you can build these shield walls as well once you hit Tech 3 and you get the field engineer, which is probably over here somewhere. It's a regular engineer. Here's the field engineer. So you can see the difference a bit compared to a regular engineer. These guys cannot afterburn. It looks like they have some cannons on them as well in order to defend themselves, so they're better at operating in the front line than these guys would be. Although, to be honest, they're probably not the best unit to build. 2,000 health. Yeah, they don't have very much health, so that doesn't work out very well for them. But they can build these, which are much better walls than the basic ones, and since their shields will recharge, so you won't need an engineer on point in order to keep them healthy in case they're getting hit by anything. An interesting point to note for the power generators for the UEF is they have something called an engineering tower, which I assume works like engineering stations did in the last game. Things that are nearby will automatically get repaired or reclaimed, but I have no way to check what the radius on these towers is. So anyway, over here you have the Tech 1 air units. This is a Tech 1 gunship. It's a cute little drone looking guy. You just got a little machine gun. This is your scout drone, basically like a Tech 1 spy plane. It just moves fast and has good vision radius. This is your interceptor unit, good for taking out other air units but cannot do anything else. And then this is your attack bomber over here, the Phoenix. Moving over into Tech 2, you have quite a bit more options for air. You have the Strife fighter bomber, so it can engage air targets as well as bomb land targets. The broadsword gunship, a unit straight from the original Supreme Commander. Much more rapid fire on this machine gun. And it looks a lot cooler than the little drone does. Here we have a torpedo bomber. This is torpedoes only. It does not launch bombs at all. So it's only designed to take out naval units. If you're not facing any big naval threats or you already have naval superiority, you probably won't be ever building those. This is your Tech 2 air transport, which should have a self-defense weapon. That might be an anti-air turret, not a ground turret, so it might only be able to fire at air units. Unfortunately, I can't get it to fire those cannons. This is an air superiority fighter, which is unique to the UEF at Tech 2. Most of the other factions only get access to a air superiority fighter, at Tech 3. So this is a nice option for the UEF in order to gain air superiority early on in the game. And then you have a, not a strategic bomber, but a specific bombing unit as well. So you have your air superiority fighter, you have a bomber, and then you also have a fighter bomber, so you can fly mixed squadrons. You can mix these in with air superiority fighters, or you can mix those in with bombers, or both, and they can supplement each other quite well. And then in the Tech 3 range, you have a Tech 3 gunship, Excalibur, which has big guns. Now, it doesn't fire as fast as the machine gun, obviously, but those are much heavier caliber weapons, so it's doing a lot more damage per shot. And then this is your Wasp, the fighter, in the Tech 3 range. Here you have your strategic bomber, the Ambassador Mark II. I don't really see too much of a difference over the regular Ambassador. And then here you have your Dark Light spy plane, which actually looks very different from the original spy plane for the UEF, as the original spy plane in the Forged Alliance game, it was kind of modeled after the SR-71 Blackbird. And unique to the UEF at T3 is the Continental Heavy Air Transport. They're the only ones who have a T3 air transport, which comes equipped with its own personal shield as well, which is very nice. There's also an upgrade that you can unlock in the air tree, which lets it carry, I think, an extra 15 capacity. So right now it's sitting at 40. I'm not sure how heavily it grades Tech 3 units or Tech 2 units versus Tech 1. So, like, I don't know if 40 means it can hold 4 Tech 3 or it can hold like 8 Tech 2, I'm really not sure. And then down for the naval units, there's only one Tech 1 naval unit, the Thunderhead class frigate, which is direct fire as well as anti-air. But the Thunderhead has stealth, so that's cool. At the Tech 2 level, you have the Poseidon battleship, which in UEF fashion has very big cannons on it. I can't help but feel like it was inspired by the Forged Alliance battleship, which is also in this game, but it's at Tech 3. You have your anti-air cruiser, the Mastodon, which also has a turret for direct defense right in the front there, and a tactical missile launcher as well. And then over here, you have your submarine. The UEF attack submarine has a cannon on top, so you do more DPS against surface vessels if you have it surfaced versus it being in the water, although it is then vulnerable to a fire back, of course, from anything that's not a submarine or things that don't have torpedoes. Moving on over to Tech 3, this is the battleship that the Poseidon, you cannot help feel, was inspired by, because it's got massive, it's practically artillery. It's not really just a gun. It's a very, very long-range battleship and a very high-health battleship, but it takes a long time to reload its main cannons, and if you have it broadsiding, the third cannon, of course, can fire as well. But it still hasn't fired its second volley yet, so there you go. Very, very slow rate of fire, but very, very, very high damage. You also have the Neptune-class battlecruiser, again, from Forged Alliance. I don't remember what's special about the battlecruisers, so I can't explain what it can do. I think It might have depth charges to fight against submarines, but don't. I'd have to look it up. I really can't remember. It does have torpedoes, so there's that. But it has a lot less health than the battleship, I think even less than half. And then here is the ACE, the strategic submarine. It can build nukes. And something to note for Supreme Commander 2, at least in the RVE mod, because that's the only one that has the strategic submarines, the nukes from the strategic submarines do not appear to have a range limitation like they did in Forged Alliance. So you should be able to nuke anywhere over here from here, whereas before it would probably need to pull up to about here in order to be able to nuke those areas. And that's pretty much it for the basic units. So we can move on over to the experimentals after I show you. This is the radar station for the UEF, and to get an idea of its range, it has a very limited intel radius, but the ping will extend to about here. So with it being right there in the middle of the land bridge, you get to about this point on that side, and of course the same point on the other side. I do believe there is an upgrade for the UEF to get a slightly better intel radius out of their radar stations. So if we want to start looking at the experimentals, I guess we'll start with the buildings. This is the land gantry. You build your land-based experimentals out of here. And this is the air gantry. You can build the flying experimentals from this point. Your naval experimentals have to be built directly on the water. They don't come from a factory like the rest of the experimentals do. So up here, we have the Prime Aegis, the experimental shield generator, which the area of effect, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it compared to this, isn't necessarily that much bigger. It is definitely bigger, but it's not a huge amount. It's not what you'd expect from an experimental, and the reason for that is actually because of how powerful the shield is. So if you look at the Tech 3 shield, you have 55,000 shield HP on it. Whereas if you look at the Prime Aegis, you have 500,000, so nearly 10 times the shield strength from the Prime Aegis. It can very easily protect critical buildings in your main base. And I don't know if you can, like, it says it has 1,200 DPS, so I'm assuming it's talking about these, but I think those are just anti-air. Although I'm not entirely sure, like I can't tell it to attack anything. It can only return fire. So I'm not entirely sure why it has 1,200 DPS, but it does. It can at least shoot back against something. I believe it's these 4 what appear to be anti-air turrets that it's talking about. Second, you have a very fun unit, the NOAA unit cannon. So if I just load this guy up with these perceivals here, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's called a unit cannon because it launches your units across the map. They load up inside and turn into like little packages. Oh, please go inside. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm sorry. I've just wasted a little bit of time. You have to build the units, so let's see how long it takes. 3 seconds, 1 second to build these. So build 10 of these. I think that's actually 11. So it loads them up. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like you can build Tech 2 or Tech 3 units, which stinks. And it's a problem that I've noticed with some of the, at least non-UEF, experimental factories or aircraft carriers. it seems like you can only build Tech 1 stuff. This doesn't apply to, for example, the Atlantis 2 experimental submersible aircraft carrier. But we can just take a look at how this guy works. I'm not sure exactly what its range is, so let me show that to you real quick. This is the NOAA unit cannon. So we're looking right about there. So I should be able to fire somewhere in between these two mass extractors from all the way over here. Unfortunately, not all of your units fire right on that mass extractor. So 7 were launched. We'll see how many survive the landing. Not every single unit is going to survive landing. I'm not sure if them landing does any damage to structures underneath or units underneath. So he died. Alright. So that is a grand total of 3 that survived? 3 out of 7 survived, so about half. And that's consistent with some of the tests I did on it before. Like, I launched 10 units and about 5 survived, so you can expect about half the units that you launch to survive the impact of landing. Considering you can't build T3 units in it right now, it's kind of, I guess you could say, for the lulz. It's not necessarily the best experimental until you can start launching some serious firepower into someone else's base. This is the Novak Center, which is exactly how it was in Forged Alliance, I believe, except for the Novak satellite has health, and it has 100 health. And I'm not sure if any anti-air unit can hit it, or if, for example, only fighters can attack it, or if only Tech 3 anti-air SAM launchers can attack it, or if it's not actually attackable, like it was in Forged Alliance. I'd need to test. But aside from not knowing if it's invulnerable or not, it works the exact same way. You tell it to attack a point, it moves over, and it will just start shooting its laser beam as it moves around, kind of in a gunship fashion. Not the fastest, but if it is invulnerable, the only way to take it out is by destroying the Novak Center that operates it. If it is destroyable, it might work in a similar way to how the Cybrin experimental proto-brain works, where you can detach the brain and send it at your opponent, and it has lasers and that sort of gimmicky stuff. But if it gets blown up, the center will automatically build a new one to replace it for free. The only thing you have to remember is that you're basically just throwing mass at your opponent, which is probably not ideal. After you see this, I'll show you the artillery systems. There are 2 experimental artillery systems and 1 artillery system. And so there's the little satellite. So those are the experimental buildings for the UEF, not counting the artillery. This is the Tech 3 long-range artillery for the UEF. It doesn't really look very fancy at all. But it has good range. I believe from where it is, it can about fire to there. So I'm just going to tell it to fire here. You'll see it moves quite quickly compared to some of the other races' artillery, because the UEF is all about artillery. And we can see just about how accurate that shot's going to be. I wonder if I can get those guys to blow up. Alright, so that was not very accurate. I mean, it's accurate enough. And it's possible it just needs to fire a few shots before it starts hitting the point you've actually told it to. That was much closer. So that is the Tech 3 artillery system. And then directly next to it is what's called the Experimental Quantum Distortion Artillery, the Disruptor Station. And it has this special ability where you can activate the Disruptor Station. And I have no idea what this does. So I'll have to look it up on the forums or figure it out on my own, because I really have no idea what that does. I do know, however, that it works as an artillery system. So we'll have it attack the same spot. And it fires several shells at the same time. So because of that, it's probably going to be less accurate. Come on then. Fairly accurate. I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Fires a bit faster than the Tech 3 artillery does, and here is the Mavor Elite, the replacement for the Mavor experimental artillery from the UEF in Forged Alliance. This one is pretty big. And the Mavor does not have a minimum, or sorry, it does not have a maximum range. So anywhere that's technically part of the map can be fired on. So I can fire all the way back here. The Mavor doesn't care where you tell it to fire, it will fire. One of the key points of the Mavor from Forged Alliance was that it was very, very accurate, so we can test and see just how accurate this is. Rate of fire looks pretty good, considering the distance it can fire. Having 2 shells fire that quickly is not slouching. It says it does 1,440 DPS, so considering the distance and the area of effect on that, that's fairly accurate. Like, if you're attacking a structure, some kind of building that has any sort of size to it, yeah, that second shot was right on the money pretty much. You're probably going to hit, and shields aren't going to protect it for very long. Yeah, that's very, very close. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the experimental structures. Now, these over here aren't experimental structures, but I forgot to go over them earlier. This is your Tech 2 tactical missile defense system. It's kind of inspired by modern-day anti-missile defense systems. It's like a mobile, or sorry, not mobile, it's a kind of rapid-fire Gatling gun that just sprays a lot of bullets in the direction of the missile in the hopes that one will hit. This is a Tech 3 tactical nuclear missile defense. So this is not only a nuclear missile defense system, but also a tactical missile defense system. I believe that's what this piece right here is. It's kind of a smaller version of this over here. So you could theoretically, I mean, if you wanted to spend all the money, you could theoretically never buy one of these again once you unlocked these. It wouldn't be a smart idea, though. And then this is your nuclear missile silo, where you can build and launch nukes from. So UEF nuke looks like any other nuke. All 4 of the little silos open, even though it only fires 1 nuke. Well, that's going to be a bit. So down here you have the Atlantis II experimental aircraft carrier. You can only build Oh, I lied earlier. I'm sorry. Looks like I can only build the T1 units out of it. I'm really not sure if that's intentional or not. You can still put Tech 3 and Tech 2 units into them. You can't build the Tech 2 and Tech 3 units out of it. And there's the pretty nuke. Big old fireball. But, of course, the Atlantis, as its predecessor could do, can dive under the surface, and it can make units while it is underneath. But I am not sure how strong the Atlantis is compared to other ships. The Atlantis in Forged Alliance was actually really good. It was a very good naval weapon. I don't necessarily get that impression off of the Atlantis 2 because of its 160 DPS. Where if you compare it to something like the Super Triton Experimental Dreadnought, which has these three, I'm not really sure how to describe it other than mortar fireball cannons. It has an awesome 6,075 DPS, which is quite a step up from 160. Or was it 120? 160, I had it right the first time. But, to show you how these things work, they're very short range. It can't fire much further than that. But as you can see, it fires massive, massive weapons. Now, this does have a significant range disadvantage compared to things like the T3 battleship, which I should be able to show you the range of. It has no problem firing all the way over to this point. Whereas if I try to get him to shoot about the same distance, so we'll say about here. He's going to have to move in order to be able to get there. I believe these are a form of anti-air. Nope, those look like regular cannons. Okay. Yes, they are. Those are just regular old cannons. This probably doesn't have any anti-air. Okay, stop shooting at each other. Moving on to the air experimental units. Not counting the Novax, you have the AC-1000 Terror from the vanilla game. It is a gunship inspired kind of by modern day C-130, or the AC-130 Spooky Inspector gunships. It has a very fast machine gun, a less fast firing cannon, as well as kind of like a 105 howitzer that does a lot of damage. It's a very good gunship. The UEF also have the T4 C-230 Star King Extreme Experimental Air Transport. And in order to demonstrate something unique to the UEF naval units have the ability to be transported. So I believe you can also use the Tech 3 transport to transport them. But we'll see how many this guy can pick up. Which he did a little bit and adjusted the game speed. So we can load the battleship up inside. One thing that bothers me a little bit about this mod is that, for example, in Forged Alliance, you could... Okay, so a battleship just costs 20 points, so you could put 3 battleships in, plus probably this. We'll see how many points he costs. No? The artificial intelligence for the transports in Forged Alliance, if you told a unit to dock up with it, the transport would move most of the time to where the unit was, rather than make the unit move to where the transport is. Because the transport can fly, it's obviously faster. That doesn't happen with any of the transports in Supreme Commander 2. Not necessarily just this mod, it's a Supreme Commander 2 issue. So that did 15 points into it. So you could do 3 Tech 3 battleships and 1 Tech 2 battleship. I can check real quick if the Neptune class battlecruiser costs the same as the battleship did. If it costs 20, then the Tech 3 units cost the same. No, that only cost 20, or that cost 15, unlike the battleship. So they do each have separate ranks. And then I'll just unload them over here. I suppose I can also see if it can pick up the Dreadnought. He's moving, so probably. Moving on, over here, this is the Mega Fortress, an experimental airborne mobile factory. This does not have the same issue that the Atlantis does. You can build Tech 3, you can build Tech 2, you can build Tech 1. Now you can't build every single unit. For example, you don't have access to the transport units for Tech 2 and Tech 3. But you do have access to the fighters, you have access to the spy plane and the bombers. So not too big of a deal, as well as it comes equipped with its own weapons package, of course. And then over here, this is the T5 Terra Fortress Experimental Mobile Factory. So I believe it's just a bigger and better version of the Mega Fortress. It has more health. It has way higher DPS. Except for what I assume is anti-air. It has slightly less anti-air. Unless that means splash damage. I'm really not sure what that symbol means. But this is basically just better in every single way, as well as having the ability to build T1, T2, and T3. This is probably a little bit slower. It looks pretty badass, though. Anyway, can you pick him up? Oops. So it can pick up the Atlantis. That costs 50 points. And it can pick up the Experimental Dreadnought as well, which costs 50 points. So Experimentals cost 50. You could carry one of the Experimental Dreadnoughts and one Neptune-class battlecruiser as well. And that's it for the air experimentals. The last in the game is, of course, the land experimentals. So, starting with the Fat Boy 2, this is the Vanilla Games replacement for the original Fat Boy. It doesn't do a very good job of replacing the original Fat Boy. It's more like a mobile artillery platform. It doesn't keep the shield, it doesn't keep the mobile factory aspect of the original Fat Boy. This one's just a much more maneuverable artillery piece. It does look pretty cool, though. You can't really lie about that. And this is the Devastator Experimental Riot Tank, which is actually one of my favorite of the UEF experimentals, just because of how cool it looks. And it doesn't necessarily look that great right now. I'll turn it sideways so you get a good view. This has the unique feature of, by basically paying absolutely nothing, you can upgrade certain aspects of it. So here we can add a tactical missile launcher upgrade. Now we have a tactical missile launcher on it. We can add anti-air. Now we have anti-air turrets on it. And then here we have a side weapons upgrade, which gives it some support weapons. They're located right here. It says side weapons, but they're right here in the front. There and there. And then you have the main barrel upgrade, which basically doubles the length of the main barrel. It doesn't double it, but it does extend the main barrel length. And now you can consider it a finished experimental. I don't really know why you can upgrade these, because they're so cheap, there's no reason for you to not upgrade all of them. Like, the grand total is 1500 mass. And if you can't afford to put 1500 mass onto this at the point where you can build it, then maybe you shouldn't build it. But there you go. It's got missile launchers. It's got an awesome main cannon. It's got side weapons. It has anti-air. It's just a really cool tank. And then here you have the hammer, an experimental assault bot. It does exactly what it looks like it does. It's just a giant bipedal. Yeah, Gauss rifles are cool. I like that. It kind of reminds me of the Fafnir from the Equire/Battletech series, but it doesn't necessarily look like the Fafnir. It just kind of reminds me of it. Here you have the experimental sniper bot. It's a quadruped, and it has a few support weapons, which I believe I can get it to fire if I tell it to attack a close target. Yes. So those are the support weapons. It's not completely defenseless, but it's not using its main weapon right now. If I tell it to attack all the way over here. So there you go. I'm not sure what its max range is. Let's see. Can you attack from here without moving? No, it's gotta move. So that is its maximum range right there. It's shooting into the canyon wall, but that's not really a problem. It has extreme range for being a direct fire unit, not artillery. One of these can put some serious hurt on something from range, and again, you have to keep in mind it's not defenseless like a typical sniper, well, a non-experimental sniper bot would be. And this thing looks awesome. Probably one of my favorites, up there with the Devastator riot tank. So moving on to the T5 experimental units, you have the Jackhammer experimental unpacking cannon, which is a really roundabout way of saying artillery. So, yeah, it's an artillery piece. Nope, that was too far. There we go. So, not nearly as good of range as a artillery piece, a Tech 3 artillery piece is going to have. Probably a slightly better range than a Tech 2 artillery piece. But it doesn't have a point defense system as far as I know. And it doesn't say how much... there, it does say. It does 1,500 DPS. But it has a very slow rate of fire, so that means it's doing quite a bit of impact damage. And it's mobile, so unlike your T3 artillery installation, even though that can fire from further away, this can run to safety if needed. But it's not something you're going to want to build on the front lines. Maybe to shell your opponent's army from a distance before it reaches you, because the travel time on that artillery shell actually isn't that long. You can probably snipe a couple of strong units out of his military. This is the King Cryptor. There's nothing really new about it. except number tweaks for this mod. I can't remember. I think it has anti-air turrets on it. I really don't remember. I don't particularly like the King Cryptor. I think it looks dumb. But it has some pretty cool weapons. These are pretty much... They look a lot like what has been used. Oh, he's still carrying it. They look a lot like what's been used on the Super Triton Dread. Not exactly the same, but kind of similar. And here we have the Juggernaut Experimental Bombardment Vehicle. So you can see it has some defensive turret installations on it, and it's kind of set up similar to the Fatboy 2. But this is a much better artillery piece than the Fatboy 2 is. What's the range? Really big, really cool cannons. Very good firing speed. And better range than the Jackhammer has. So realistically, as far as I know, not much reason to buy the Jackhammer over the Juggernaut, except for, like, if your economy can't handle it. But this guy's really cool. I suppose it kind of works as a replacement for the Scathis, which was technically a Cybran unit, not a UEF unit, but it's a mobile, rapid-fire artillery. Then finally, you have the real replacement for the Fatboy, the original Fatboy. They call it the Armored Fortress, and it's an experimental mobile factory. It comes equipped with a personal shield. Well, it's not a personal shield. It comes with a shield generator that has a big bubble around it to protect your forces as they move with it. It has the 4 track cannons, similar to the original Fatboy, as well as the Fatboy 2. And it is, of course, a mobile factory, so you can build your military as it's moving. Although I have noticed some very weird tendencies with its auto-pathing. I've noticed it kind of likes to swerve as it moves. But this is probably the most powerful experimental you have at your disposal as the UEF. Or the most powerful land experimental you have at your disposal. Because you have the mobile shield, you have the mobile factory, you have pretty high DPS artillery, and pretty good range on it as well. And I do believe that that's everything. That's all the experimentals. We fired our nuke already, of course. We have another nuke over here. But look ourselves. That's pretty much it as far as the UEF goes. I will be making a video showing the Cybran units off within the next couple days, and I'll put a link to the Eon Illuminate descriptions in the Eon Illuminate unit overview in the description. And I will see you guys later.